Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to the Kuiken family for the invitation and for putting this together. And in particular, thanks to all of you who decided to come out this morning. We very much appreciate it. Let me tell you what's going to happen, and then we'll get to it, and then we'll meet the folks who are going to do it. For 45 minutes or so, we're going to have a conversation, as you heard, about inspiring the next generation to get into the trades. It's a conversation that we're going to ask you to join at the end of this little dialogue. After about 45 minutes or so, a Q&A with all of you, comments, reactions to what we have going on here. And then, obviously, we're going to be here for the rest of the day, and hopefully that will continue both for the rest of today and then as we all sort of disperse and go back to our lives. These three gentlemen, as you had heard, were here 2 years ago, and a little bit of insight as to why we think that this is the right group to have this conversation again 2 years later. The three of them obviously are in this business and practice this trade and have for a very long time, and have got a lot of thoughts on it. But for the younger people who may be watching this at other places and thinking about how they get into the profession, the three of them represent a large number of the pathways into and through the business. Some of them have decided to stay very small, some of them have decided to grow, some remodeling and renovation, some new build, some have kept the tools in their hands, some have put the tools down, and those iterations go on and on. So it is a reflective viewpoint for young people to think about and to hear from folks who have done this. And so that's why these three guys are good people to have up here. If you do not know who they are, let me just give you 1 minute on that. Tyler Grace, TRG Home Concepts, he's a New Jersey guy. Medford, New Jersey, small operator, just 2 right now, focused primarily on residential. And within that, I would say kitchens and baths, maybe a specialty, but certainly not a limitation as well. Been at it for a long time. In the middle, Nick Schiffer, NS Builders. He's out of Boston, working in the city, living in the city. Also renovation, restoration, also residential, but some new build as well. And he's got sort of an urban approach, although it does not limit him to that at all. And then John Hourihan over here, Vintage Builders. There are 2 guys there. He has a partner, and they are acquiring and building new on spec. He's been doing that for a couple of years, and he has a history of doing that previous to that with another company, and then prior to that, other work as well as his own company in the trades. So it's a good representation. Our job, hopefully, today is to knock it around a little bit. They are going to be the punching bag for some of my questions and for some of the ideas. And so just be kind to them at the end, because they're the ones who have to sort of speak for you guys and hopefully put some ideas out there that will actually catch on, resonate, and maybe we can solve some of these problems. Before we get started with that, a little bit about you. I am curious to know just a couple of things about you folks. The first one is, how many of you in this room today were at this event 2 years ago, by a show of hands? So that is a little less than half, which means a lot of new blood, which we are excited about. Thank you for that. I am told by Ryan that folks have come from far afield. Over 21 states have registered, which is also very exciting. We know that some folks have come from the West Coast and California. I am just curious to know, that's probably the furthest. How many people outside of the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area are here this morning? Just take a look around at some of this. So either these guys are very exciting, which I can assure you they're not, or this is an interesting subject for a lot of folks in the trades right now. Let's get into it. More about them. Fellas, I want to hear your origin stories for getting into this business and in the decisions you've made once you got into it. Primarily in the context of speaking to people who are either thinking about doing it or are in the process of doing it. Tyler, I'm going to start with you. When did you get into it and why?
I guess I had somewhat of a non-conventional approach. I was raised in a relatively affluent town and went through grade school, high school, college, and it was like, you don't want to work with your hands, go get a degree. Went to college, did some internships, absolutely despised it, and then did what everyone told me not to and started working with my hands. I didn't necessarily, that wasn't my dream. I didn't start out I didn't get done college and be like, I want to be a contractor, I want to work with my hands. But then the more I got involved with it, the more passionate I became. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken with my business and remaining small, finding people to work for me that have that same mindset and attitude where it's more about quality and giving them an opportunity to kind of showcase their skills has always been important for building an environment within my company.
Was college a mistake?
I don't think it was a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake. I'm trying to be somewhat diplomatic.
Why did you choose college?
It was just, that's what you did. You got done high school and you went to college. So I was initially a science major and I wasn't going to be a scientist. And I was a bio major, and I just, like, the anxiety of me going to school for 4 years and coming out with a bio degree, I didn't know what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, so I dropped out, and then I re-enrolled in a program at Drexel, and I graduated from Drexel, but it was like, it was supposed to open doors, and it was going to create a life and a career path for me, and it wasn't until I got done that I realized that, like, my life's only going to be what I make it and the opportunities that I build for myself. And obviously you have to develop a network, but I feel like I did that on my own, and college didn't necessarily help me with that.
Did you feel when you decided to become a contractor that you had somehow failed or not accomplished what you'd hoped to do, that you had wasted and that this was settling, or was it something that you were excited
I
about?
think my parents did.
Not surprising.
No, so when I had started, I didn't have huge goals, aspirations. You know, I didn't necessarily have a path. It was like, this is somewhat familiar to me, growing up around a family company doing this type of work to a degree, and it was something I could fall back on. You know, I had gone the college route, and it was very disappointing to me to not come out of that with like a direct plan. So I kind of fell back on this, and it wasn't until I immersed myself in it and had kids where I was like, all right, I have some responsibility, I have to get my crap in order, and I have to make a life for myself, that like getting involved within the industry started giving back, you know, and I found there was more for me to give to this industry as well, and I think that that's really what sparked it for me. It wasn't like I got done college and was like, I want to be a contractor, this is what I want to do. It just like, it was a very organic progression for me.
I got more for you on sort of what decisions you made once you got into it, but before that, Nick, when did you get into it and why?
My father was a contractor. He owns a fence company, and I started working for him very young, but on the side I was always doing small carpentry projects. And kind of different from Tyler is that high school, I went to vocational school and I wanted to pursue construction and house carpentry. And college was similar to the situation where it was kind of forced on me from my mother's side more than my father, where my father was like, just come work for me, you know, you can run the business, yada yada. But I went to college and I pursued construction management, and 2 years into it, I was actually planning to drop out, start my own company. I stuck with it, and glad I did, because I did graduate and I worked for a big commercial firm, and it gave me a different viewpoint on the industry. I'm glad I did that, and I don't look at college necessarily as a mistake on my part. I think I would have been maybe further along in my own business, but not necessarily where I am today.
What was the decision to go to Voc school in high school? And what were the options open to you for that?
Well, there was the town high school, but it was more so school wasn't necessarily for me, and I wanted to have the opportunity to work in a wood shop and go through the trades, and that was I've always been that way. I've always worked with my hands, even very young, you know, whether I was building forts or building sheds in my backyard. So Voc school gave me the opportunity to kind of jump into that, and knowing that if I progressed quick enough, I would be, it was set up basically 2 weeks you'd be in school, 2 weeks you'd be out on co-op. And junior year, I mean, it was basically 2 weeks of school, 2 weeks I'd work for myself or for someone else, and then 2 weeks back to school.
What was the culture, I guess maybe is the question? What did people think about folks in high school that chose the Voc route?
There was definitely a negative connotation around it. I mean,
how did that manifest itself?
I remember we had to take a test to get in, and I was super nervous, naturally. Like, that I was going to fail this test and not get into Voc school. And I remember the guidance counselor saying, no, listen, even the bad kids get into the Voc school. And I was like, and here I am like antsy about like whether I'm going to get in or not so I can work in a shop. And that always drove me crazy because even my parents and their friends, it's like, well, why are you going to Voc school? And it would be the same conversation. I'd just explain like, that's what I like to do. I like working with my hands.
Cool. All right, I got more for you as well. So back to you, Tyler.
I'm cool with that. Totally fine with that.
We don't want to get Johnny too wound up. All right, Johnny. What and why? When and why?
Dude, I didn't have a path, and I feel like a lot of people don't have paths. I didn't know what I was going to do when I was little. I think I wanted to be a firefighter. I think that was my goal. And back then, well, two things. I wanted to be a firefighter, but I also wanted that sticker on the back of my mom's car. That was a college logo. You know, I feel like everyone had those, and it was like, I think I got one from my cousin. I put it on my car.
Yeah, you can just buy that.
Yeah, you can. But I think I wanted to. I wanted to be the first kid to go to college. There was kind of that stigma as well. But you know, I was watching This Old House in the Yankee Workshop when I was little, and I started building hockey stick furniture because I was at rinks all the time, and I was doing that in my mom's basement, and that's kind of where I caught the fever. And then in high school, we had an architecture class, and I just loved it. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. I thought I was unstoppable, and but I didn't know where it was going to go. I just thought it was just fun drawing and kind of using the same stuff that you saw in like New Yankee Workshop, where he has like a sketch and he turns it into reality. And I was like, I can do this. And it was like coffee tables and bookcases, and but that's what it was. And then I played hockey in college. For me, came to me because one of the kids I played with was really, really good at hockey. So colleges came and was like, well, you're not bad either. Do you want to go to college? And I was like, how? Why? What would I do? I just didn't even fathom it. And they were like, what do you enjoy? I'm like, I enjoy building hockey stick furniture. And they're like, and I like drawing. They're like, we can put you in architecture. And I was like, all right, I'll give that a shot. I gave it a shot, realized that what I thought I was excelling at in high school was like, I watched Frank Lloyd Wright on TV, like a house. Kids that I was going up against in school had gone to Falling Water. Like, I was so far behind, so I had to reevaluate what I wanted to do, and I also didn't want to be sitting in an office. I did a co-op, and I fell asleep in a hallway. Like, my chair was just like leaned back, and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I just couldn't see myself in that I wanted to take a creation and turn it into reality. And so then I just went out and got a job, and I worked all the way through college as a carpenter, and I never gave up. I was the one kid at Wentworth, which is a technical school in Boston, that did my final thesis on a residential firm when it was all commercial. So I took some serious heat from all the teachers, like, it won't work. And I'm like, it will. So I've always had that piss and vinegar, you know, not just with you.
So skipping around a little bit, moving forward, these guys have all got their own companies, they're doing it. Why spec? Why are you in the, I'm going to take all the risk and build this thing and try to sell it, as opposed to what these two guys are doing, which is
Because there's too much crap out there. I mean, I'm doing customs, I'm doing a little light commercial, but the specs, yeah, I don't want it. It's a little bit of headaches, and there is risk, but it's really just to really show the market what I think a Craftsman can create with the same budget that every other spec guy's using, that's from a finance degree or did well in stocks, killed it in a startup, and they're just using money, and the market just doesn't know. So I want to educate the market, and the only way I can do that and make an impact is to build my product the way I want to, and that people can walk it. The only bummer is that all of them pre-sell, so there's no open houses. So my theory doesn't work.
So how is that as a pathway for young people thinking about getting into this, when they look at that as a profession in terms of sort of risk, reward, ability to pull it off? You had a lot of experience doing it, working for someone else.
Agreed. And I think part of it is the path nowadays, like, you can go work for Google, make good money. That's the big thing, is when we went to college, it was like, you're gonna get a starting job at like 60, 70 grand. And I could have in construction management. It just wasn't the right fit. So I think the stigma is, what are you gonna make when you start out? And it isn't easy. You're gonna be a PM or assistant PM or a super, and it's a lot of stress. A lot of stress, and it's a value thing where people can go to a day job now and just do their TPS reports and get away with it, and it is what it is. But the stress isn't really there. I mean, you could lose your job, but with our business, it is day to day. Like, people, you got to call today, moving trucks tomorrow. Like, that's a deadline that can't change. You can slide paperwork to the side and go home. It's a different atmosphere. But the path, I mean, my whole point of that was you can make really good money in this, to have a family, have kids, and you're not going to be struggling, which was what I thought when I first got in this business. Like when I had my first company and I let go of it, it was because I had my first child, and I talked to my HVAC guy that I worked with on the side, my plumber who had been doing it for decades, and I'm like, is this my life forever? Like, is it going to be 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, my phone doesn't shut off, and everyone expects me not to answer it? And they all said yes, so I shut it down. Well, it was, my wife was like, you need to do, what are you going to do? And I didn't know. Again, same when I was in high school. I didn't know my path. So again, I took advice from those guys, and I mean, they were 66 and still, running tin. And I was like, is this, or should I rely more on my management degree and try and do, I loved the woodworking, I loved making sawdust, but the reality of it was, what is my long-term goal in this industry, and make a bigger impact?
Nick, you've got 12, 13 total?
12 with me. Yeah.
2 years ago, you were?
Two.
What's the thought process from going from 2 to 12 so quickly, and what's the burden of doing that?
There's many burdens. I think the thought process was, I knew, I was always hands-on, and even when it was 2, I was in the field with the guys every day, but I started making connections, especially through kind of the way we marketed, with architects and interior designers, and we were getting all these cool projects, and I looked at it as an opportunity where if I can connect with other professionals for projects, why can't I connect with other people that are carpenters or project managers or supers or cabinet makers that are, equally or even more excited about this craft than I am, and why can't they be part of our team? And it started with kind of my subcontractor pool, where I was looking to like my HVAC guy who is similar age and was in it for the same reasons that I started my company. But then it became, then people started gravitating to what we were building as a company, or what I was building as a company, and wanted to be part of it, and be part of it as a carpenter, be part of it as a cabinet maker, and I kind of let that naturally unfold. I think I hold the reins pretty tight on growth. These two will disagree with me.
They disagree with you significantly.
But I think everyone that works for us today genuinely loves what they do. And everyone is, my sole goal is to put them in a position that they can be successful, but not only successful, but, be proud of what they're producing each and every day.
A lot of those people who are working for you came to you, right?
Every single person, including all the office staff, sent me a DM on Instagram.
And so what is it, do you think, that you're doing that is attracting complete strangers to come and try to work for your company?
I think it's the way I promote what we do.
The skinny jeans.
I was going to go plaid shirt.
It's just being on film.
I thought we were going to save these for the end.
We got other things.
2 years ago, my jeans were bigger.
ECS
too.
has you beat. Yeah, picture.
And they're light jeans too.
They're
so.
actually painted on.
Why are they seeking you out?
I think so. Obviously, I don't want to make this about Instagram, but I think I took a heavy approach to that and promoting what we did, but talking about not just the how, but the why, and constantly promoted the why, and even the good, the bad, the stuff that I messed up, talking about it and relating to other people. So, I remember specifically, I posted something that I had messed up, and I talked about it and how I corrected it, and this conversation exploded on there to the point where it's like, I've messed that up. I didn't think that. Like, all I see is pretty stuff on social media, and I didn't realize that other guys have the same struggle. And when I started relating with other people, they were like, this can be a good fit for me. Like, I could bring value to that company. And I think solely it's because I've chosen the path of sharing the why of what we do, and people wanting to be part of that.
You interact with a lot of different subs and other companies. Do you think that the people who have sought you out, that came to you via social media, have a different mindset or characteristic that is distinctive from the other folks you find out there in the trade, or that's just the way they found you?
I think it's a mix.
What do you think the differences are? What do you see in their sort of either talents or sensibilities or culture that is different? Because
I mean, specifically to like subcontractors, I talk with a lot of them, and they work for a number of builders in Boston. But we always sit down and talk on our jobs, and that, when they come to our job, it's different. And everyone is there and we're there to have a good time. We're there to develop, build a product and, have a successful project at the end, but we're all there and genuinely enjoying what we're doing. And we're thinking about, my floor guy, for example, we always talk about how he's on jobs and it's just a madhouse and that he's working under people. And when we, the goal is that everyone can work efficiently, but also be successful, individually. The global goal for that project is to be successful overall, but individually, that success has to be there for each of them.
Tyler, it's just you and Steve, two guys. You've told me, you have no intentions of making it more than that for the foreseeable future. Why are you staying small?
I think my biggest thing is just controlling the process, controlling the end result. And from a business perspective, I've been able to develop my business in a way that I can make money doing so. It's not necessarily from a scalability standpoint, but I'm able to control almost every aspect of my job that legally I'm allowed to control. So I know, and my customers know what they're going to get at the end of the day. And I like being able, to be the one who's solving the problems. When there's an issue, I do like that I'm able to have my customers come to me, or I'm able to get a hold of my customers. And I think that when most people hire me, that's why they hire me. So it's been peace of mind. It's been controlling the final product. It's been family, not creating an environment where it's like I can't take a day off, or I'm responsible for a dozen guys. My personality type and who I am as a person just isn't conducive to that.
Do you feel it holds you back at all?
Oh, I'm sure it does. And I think a lot of that's my personality type and the anxieties that I have in life. And that's always been difficult for me. But like any time that I steer from that, it's not, I take a hit professionally, I take a hit personally, my family life takes a hit. So it's like I can push, but I always kind of fall back where I am. And there's many reasons for that. And from a business perspective, it may not be the best thing, but I also, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, I didn't get into this for the business end of it. I got into it because what makes me happy is building stuff. Long term, maybe not the best bet. Long term, maybe I have health issues and everything else. But that's what makes me happy, and that makes me the best person that I can be.
What do you think of his decision to stay small, Nick?
I can relate to the comment he made about people hire him because that's what they expect for him to show up on the job. And I remember being there and remember, when I was at a different point where I was ready to grow and I didn't want to replace myself on site. And I know my company hindered and growth hindered, and we ran into issues because I was spending too much time on site, where I think my view of that particular comment now is that they're hiring us or me for my approach and for our execution. And if that means I'm on site every day, or if that means I'm in the office every day, or if that means I sell them the job and I never talk to them again, the execution is what they're after, because that's what we're promoting. And I don't think it's a bad decision on his part. There's days where I think about, should I still be small? Should I go back to being just in the field? Would I enjoy it more? But I think I think everyone in here can relate that you kind of have this back and forth with, am I doing the right thing? Or, today was a tough day and, and should I consider doing something different?
Johnny, you grown, right? You hired?
Yeah, have to.
Why?
Can't be everywhere, clearly. It's still happening on job sites now. Stuff's getting built, but I'm not there, so I need more sets of eyes. Yeah. So I've held off for a long time. Same thing, want to keep first 9 months really tight, really execute what I'm going to execute, so my name's all over it. But in the future, people will hire vintage builders, and they will know and assume that anyone that's in the company that we put our trust into, they can also trust. So it doesn't matter. They're always going to get that execution because I'm still going to be accountable for it.
So let's define the problem. That's their pathways. The problem, you can look at the numbers from a whole bunch of different places, but they are basically this. There are 3 to 5 million jobs in the trades right now that are unfilled. These are jobs that exist that employers cannot find people for. it's going to grow by another 2 to 4 million in the next 5 to 7 years. So it's a problem that is acute, and it's a problem that is getting bigger. The average age of the person in the skilled trades is about 56, so they are retiring a lot faster than the new ones are coming in. I don't think there's anyone in this room who needs any more explanation about the problem. You're all probably very aware of it. The question is, why do we have the problem? And then what is it that we can do about the problem as an industry, as people who are in it, who are suffering the effects of the problem, and also who probably care passionately about this business. So I turn it to you guys, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on what is the problem. I'll throw out a couple. You've mentioned them, and I'll challenge you on a couple others. We'll start with the stigma. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we don't have enough time to spend time on anything. But the stigma is a real thing, yes or no? Johnny?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I've had people DM me and just say, hey, thanks for letting me know that you can actually make money and be successful and look accomplished. Like, you're not going to wear, you know, I'm going to say the wrong thing, like a t-shirt. I'm going to use a different term, but it's being taped. But yeah, I mean, I grew up with you know, that whole look, and you didn't know you can make the money in it. And people are like, I'm so grateful that you're there to say, hey, I can be proud of what I do. And it's a whole different ballgame.
Stigma's real, Nick?
I think so.
Do you feel it now that you're a successful business owner with 11 people working under you? Is the stigma still hanging around?
Yeah.
How so?
I mean, this probably tails into something else, but like even college, like the whole stigma that you have to go to college,
Yeah.
and relating that. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, and I think everyone in here, we've all said, you know, that the force to go to school was, you know, it was just too forced, and everyone's kind of coming full circle now, realizing that there are other options. But to piggyback what John said, that, you know, there is that, it's like a dealership. Like, you bring your car to the dealership, and there's a stigma that they're going to rip you off.
That's awesome.
You don't think it's like, it's totally changed from even 2 years ago when we were here?
Yeah.
Like, the fact that everyone's doing like upstate merch shirts. Right. Instead of just wearing that plain t-shirt, they're branding their companies and like their cars, their vehicles.
Yeah.
Like Tyler's truck, Detmore's truck. It's a different class where everyone's elevating it up, where before it was a magnet, slap it up and you go. And that was you put in what you get out of it.
You're right.
I feel like we've isolated ourselves, and like everyone who's sitting here, although it's nice to think like this is the industry as a whole, it's not indicative of the entire industry. Like, this isn't everyone who's doing this, and that's the issue. And like, even for me, something that's kind of resonated and stuck with me my whole life is that not only my parents, but people coming to me and telling me, you don't want to work for a living. And that always just blew my mind. Like, no, that's what I want to do, because any job that I ever had where I wasn't busy all day, I wanted to blow my head off. Yep. Like, I want to work really hard, and I want to get compensated fairly for that. But that like societal approach that you want to work as little as possible and get paid as much as possible has always somewhat blown my mind.
All right, so that's going to jump forward to...
Kev, one thing about that. I mean, everyone's gone to a party and heard their parents brag about who they're dating. And I feel like I've always gone to these parties and they're always bragging about so-and-so that like owns all this property, so-and-so that's a lawyer, so-and-so's driving a Bentley or whatever. Only till like recently, where like you have a following, like even my in-laws, they're like, you know, my son-in-law, he's a builder. Like, that wasn't said all the time. You guys can all relate, but I'm always in those, every time there's a cookout, it's like, you know, that contract is just trash. It was always a negative, and I'll be sitting at the table like, I'm right here. But there is part of that where the common conversation was always someone's bragging about something else. And I think that is evolving, and, you know, social media has its shortcomings, but it's putting a spotlight on everybody, and everyone's raising their game. And people are excited to be in this industry.
They're probably just convincing themselves that their daughter is going to be fine. You know? Like, it's going to be okay. Like, if they continually reiterate that, it's going to be like,
you're probably right.
The grandkids are going to be all right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, guys. What would you say if I tell you the stigma's well-deserved? What would you say to the fact that every person out there has had an experience where the contractor hasn't called them back, where the failure rate is above an acceptable level for everything else in their lives, and that it's a stigma that's been well earned? Now, I'm not saying that's true, but if that's a reality, what do you say to that?
I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's not that we're disagreeing. I think it's that we're trying to combat that. And there's so much there is the opportunity to put so much attention on this trade that we need to utilize that in a positive manner. And like Johnny had mentioned, it's like everyone is now branding and everyone is more clean cut looking as a contractor, and everyone is taking their appearance. So it's so much more important now that is how we're shifting that focus from all the negative in the past to this can be a positive industry, and just continually promoting that over and over, individually and as the industry.
To your point, Tyler, I pulled a report from the National Association of Home Builders who surveyed young adults 15 to 25 years old and said, what do you want to do as a career? The top thing was medical, followed by business, and then IT. And that accounted for nearly 40% of the respondents. Construction was 10th at 3%. And then when they asked the people who would not consider construction in that first question why you wouldn't, the number one reason for not considering construction was that they were looking for a less physically demanding job. The second reason was construction is difficult. And the third reason is they wanted an office job, which to me is all the same thing.
Who'd they interview?
But regardless, I think the point was very clear. And so that's the reality, right? Instagram will do something to mitigate that. But have you ever thought that maybe this industry needs to think differently on how we work? I can remember stories that you've told. I certainly know it from my own family and the guys that I work with on the job site, where they would thump their chests with pride about the summer they did nothing but carry the rack of shingles up the ladder all summer long, or were forced to bang the nails with a hammer, whatever. And everyone laughs and smiles at it, and what's happening is that probably 90% of the people who are put through that get pushed out of the industry. Is it self-inflicted? Are we not doing this the right way? What are you guys doing to think about how can I make this job for my employees or my number one guy less physically demanding? Something that he can do for 40 years, something that he can do without getting hurt, whatever. Does that go through your mind?
Yeah.
How so? What do you do?
I think
Or are we just doing it the same way we've always been doing it?
I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to combat, especially internally, is that everything is so schedule driven. And for instance, I had the opportunity to walk them through a high-rise project in Boston and because none of them have ever been in commercial construction, never been in a high-rise that was under construction, and has never seen how that is done. And even everyone that was involved in that project talks about how everything is schedule driven. You build it as fast as you can and we'll fix it later. And that trickles all the way down to residential, where it's get it done on schedule and then we'll come back and fix it through warranty or punch or whatever. Where if we take a different approach, and I always sell it this way, it's that I'd rather you be upset with me that I'm a month behind schedule, but the product is stellar and you guys love it forever, instead me hitting our schedule date and then the quality is subpar, and for the rest of, and I'll probably never return to the project again, and you always talk about how, well, yeah, he was on schedule, but the quality of work just wasn't, we're not going to call him back. And I think it's always, for me, that's what I see as one of the biggest issues that I'm constantly trying to combat, is the schedule.
Johnny, why the war stories about when I grew up doing this, it was as hard and as miserable as it possibly could be?
You feel good inside?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
it does though, right? Right? It's a badge of honor, I guess, in some respect.
it's tangible, meaning I enjoyed those days where I can, even now, I want to go back and be able to do one little piece on a project that isn't something that I told someone to do or directed them to do. It's something that I actually physically did. But I think how we get people into this, and how even the subs I work with and Benny, I've told Benny when I first hired him for our last company, it's like, yeah, it's going to be rough days. They're going to be long. It's going to be stressful, and you're going to hate it. But we're going to build some really, really cool stuff. And that will trump all the other stuff that you have to do for the headaches. And that's honestly what I tell my kids. You know, my kid doesn't want to be he wants to be a YouTuber, and he'd see that in the list. But that's who we're combating. So it's creativity, meaning they can be creative, and we can do that day to day. And it's how you do it. It doesn't have to be, you know, swinging a floor nail gun with no air. It can be done smart. And I think that's what I do with my guys now is, hey, we're going to be creative. We're going to do it in a smart way where you're not running around like crazy. The schedule is there, but we have to use our experience on how we create these cool things so it's not so hard on me, my guys, or the client in their budget. And it's tricky, but I mean, there's a lot of experience in the room. We can't just be caught up in the day-to-day, 9 to 5, or whatever it is. We have to kind of help our guys through that. And that's what really brings more guys and more subs to us in our culture because they enjoy that end of it. It's not just, hey, that building has to get built today by 3 o'clock. It's like, hey, I sketched it. Here's all the stock. Now it's your job to be a craftsman and do your thing. And that's why they'll come back and answer the phone, not because I pay them $1,000 more for that building.
In terms of you know, what you guys do, in terms of some of the things that are probably structurally and inherently problematic with the industry, I would argue that size is one of them. Whether we like it or not, bigger companies have the resources and the ability to do more, to train, to nurture, to have advancements.
Also do more crap. Put more crap out in the market that shouldn't be there.
Depends who you're looking at. We can get into that, but
Can.
bigger.
I think we already
Yeah, I think we already did get into
discussed
that. You guys can go back. Bigger often means more efficient. You know, why does this industry continue to be a collection of self-actuators? The numbers are staggering. I mean, I could go through them. Well, just to give you guys a sense, if there are 600,000 to 800,000 construction companies in this country, which is the rough estimate, I mean, if you think about that, when you think about how many car companies there are, or technology companies, there's 600,000 to 800,000. 81% of them are independent contractors. 50% of them have one person and no employees. 50% of them are based out of their house, which is twice the national average. We know what this market looks like. Why is that a good market? Why is that serving anybody well? Because it seems to me that the young people coming up and out of the system are looking for something different. And you can go through, again, I'll spare you the results of the poll, but you can go through as to what they're looking for. And they're looking for organization, they're looking for advancement, they're looking for exposure, they're looking for technology. Are we not doing any of that for these young people?
I think, I mean, there's a much broader issue at hand, and it's everything that we're discussing. And I think it's all compounded that, like, the point of entry or the growth, if there's not a market that's willing to get a company off the ground to put those systems and benefits and pay $75,000 a year in place, aren't there from the get-go when you have kids who are growing up who they're pounding into their head that you want to take the easiest path and put the least amount of effort into it and get paid the most, and this is the most lucrative approach that you can take to go to college. Like, it starts way before all of that. And I think point of entry to start a company, you're hitting a wall.
You throw out that this is this thing where we tell them this is the most lucrative way to go through college. It is the most lucrative way to go through college. You will, over the course of a lifetime, a college graduate will earn more than twice than a high school graduate. These are not, I would argue, these are not decisions that are made that are incorrect. They're actually pretty rational decisions.
Yeah, but I feel like we created that monster. Like, because the entire industry and because we're not demanding the respect that we should, and people aren't valuing what we're doing enough, that, like, that did switch, because 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that wasn't the case. So I just feel like there's a lot more to that than, like, this is the best. Yeah, that is the best approach, but that's because we created this monster with people not valuing what we're doing and people not being able to foot the cost of hiring a bigger company or paying enough that I can pay Steve $75,000 a year and give him 401k and health benefits. Like, that's not the market that we're in, but everything has kind of come together to create that situation. It's not just like college or trades. You know, it's been a slow progression.
It's interesting that you say 75,000 because in that same survey, when they talk to those students, what price point would have them consider construction? The number was 75,000.
Yeah, because I read what you sent us.
The average, if you had read that, is 46. So it is sort of the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I just think that, so we're coming into this relatively new to this industry. John's much older than Nick and myself, but I don't think that like we ever had, like when we got into this, like we're going to be given a platform where we may be able to solve problems, you know, like so. We're trying to get our companies off the ground. We're trying to put food on the table. We're trying to figure out what way is up, and now people are coming to us. How are we going to solve an industry-wide like a problem throughout society? And I mean, we don't know. And you're challenging us with a lot of very valid points that like it's difficult to make headway of that and to make sense of that. And like it's much easier to be like, yeah, why can't we just pay people that, but if the market won't bear that and like the cost of doing that and people aren't valuing what we're doing enough, it's gonna get extreme, it's gonna get worse before it gets any better.
So you bring up a good point in the sense that a lot of us are getting into this individually to support our families. Where you look at some of these bigger companies, you know, tech companies and things, their purpose isn't to put food on their tables, their purpose is to solve an issue or a problem in society, or make something better, or to innovate. And I think the reason that there's so many people that are, you said 50% are out of their house, or one person, or zero employees, is that they're individuals doing it for their a sole need, not for a greater need. And we're up here talking about how we can combat that, where none of us went into this saying, I want to build a company that will help change this industry.
I would push back on that. I mean, when I got out of college and in business school, I went into banking, and I didn't go into banking because I was trying to solve the world's financial liquidity issue.
No, but the company did.
But me as an employee, I went into an organization that I said to myself, well, I could be paid this much, I can have this potential advancement, my
Right.
bonus range could be these types of things. So I'm talking about the employees and then the structures that we create. This is an industry where most people have decided that I'm going to be my own boss.
Right.
And they're going to, by choice, end up creating a situation where, I mean, I was thinking about some of the videos that I watched where guys are trying to figure out what's the right truck to buy or how to actually get the whole thing set up. Everyone's got to learn it for the first time themselves, as opposed to benefit from the inherent learning that comes from organizations. And is that a decision that people make that is actually systemically keeping the organization, the industry down?
Yeah, I mean, when I graduated college, I went and worked for a billion-dollar company and doing high-rise construction because they were able to offer me a salary, offer me benefits, and put me in a position that was in a field that I thought that I would enjoy. Fast forward 4 years, it was a great job. I was in the industry I loved, but I wasn't doing the craftsmanship and I wasn't involved with the hands-on approach that I thought I would be. So then I left, and rather than looking into other options, I just started my own thing because the cost of doing that was minuscule. I had my own tools, I went out, I advertised, I got jobs, and I started building from there. So you took a deep breath, I thought you were going to interrupt me.
Pace myself.
But I think it's a good point. I think that we're looking at this from a smaller scale, and that's hindering the impact that we're making on the entire industry. You know, all of these smaller companies are really focused on what is good for them instead of what is good for the industry, and having the means to, to share and expand and teach more people in one shot. I can only teach, hopefully, the 12 people that work for me. My capacity is not more than that.
So wage, the price that people earn, typically has some correlation to both productivity and skill.
Can I go back? Can I go back 1 second? You did a calc on what you make when you get out. But same with you. When we talk about how many guys you're hiring, you're getting to feed a machine. So you're getting into a system. you went to business school and then went to finance. And then when you left, that calculation wasn't as much, hey, I'm going to make X, Y, Z. You had a nut to pay off of how many years of school you went to. So that pushed you away from a lower salary you may start out with in carpentry or as a developer or whatever it is. So then you're forced to go that route and be the mail boy or whatever it is at this corporate stuff, because you need to do the math that over the next 7 years I need to pay this off. Now I'm 10 years in, I'm going to buy my first house. You know, I bought my first house when I left college because I was working the whole time. And I was able to pay off. But I think a lot of that stats that you have and the numbers, I love them. I feel like a lot of it's missing where, yeah, you might come out making $75,000, but you're paying off a note for college, where if you don't go to college and you start off at 35, 40 and none of those payments, I don't know what that ratio is. They might even break even at that point of how much take home you have.
I could tell you the ratio if you want. Because I went to business school at night on the dime of my company, so I didn't have the note to pay off. But more importantly, the average debt load that's carried by the college graduate is somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000, which is a fraction of the lifetime earning potential advantage. Even with the calculation of the nut, it is way more advantageous financially to go that route than the alternative route. Now, these are macro numbers, so I get the pushback. I understand that, right? But those are macro numbers, and you can't sort of dispute the fact that it is, by its nature, an underpaid, highly fragmented industry that we're talking about.
Well, I think the system's changing. I mean, I feel like when I grew up in it, I'm not that much older than these guys, but there was a lot more GCs that did the jack of all trades. And now I think this whole change is going where everyone's specialized, so it is getting smaller. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to stop that. And I don't know if it is going to. I think we're going to have to manipulate it and make it work. But to go back to the original comment of, is bigger better for training? I think bigger often, you might have a stat, gets simplified for pace and efficiency. Where we had our podcast, I had people DM me and say, you know, I just went to an interview with one of these bigger house companies, and they said I could be a PM starting out and I would run 300 homes a year. 300 homes a year, and then they were warning the guy that the framing crew, since everything's panelized, don't actually know how to frame. It's just plumbing walls at that point. So when you get out of that and everything gets so simplified and it's so pulled away from the connection that we're all talking about in the day-to-day processes and craftsmanship and details, that, yeah, I'm not saying that people shouldn't start out there and learn what not to do, joking, and basically figure out where their path is, and that's a good way to do it. But I do think that with those bigger firms, things get simplified, things get lost. It's just part of it. They're not going to make 100 custom homes in a year. Their numbers just won't work. So I think there is part of that I don't know where the path's going to go for people, but I think I want to stand here and fight for craftsmanship, so that I don't want the people that want to make $200,000 a year with me. I want the people that want to have pride in what they do and are happy with what they make because they're proud of the product that they leave with at the end of the day. And that's only who I want. And I think that may not appeal to everybody, and I get it. I'm not going to change it.
Time is short. Let's talk about what we think some of the potential solutions could be. I've asked you guys to think about it a little bit beforehand. No one has all of the answers, but in no particular order. You got any thoughts on things that we can do, either individually, this crowd, systemically, industry-wide, that can reverse what is a very clear trend, that not enough people see this as a viable industry for them, that it is not competing against many of those other industries out there? Tyler, you got any thoughts?
I mean, personally, from my approach, like, it's hard for me to see outside of my own vision. And like, what's important to me in my company is building with quality and putting my best foot forward. And that's, I mean, a very, as we mentioned many times, but romantic approach. You've kind of enlightened us with there needs to be a larger scale change, because that's not going to get the ball rolling to where we need it to be. So on that bigger scale, I don't know realistically. I think that's a tough question, and I'm not in a situation where I have experience putting systems in place to make that work. You know, for me, I do feel like I have an impact pushing quality, and maybe it's a very small impact, but that I'm kind of controlling what I can control, and I know what I know, and that's where personally I know I can make a difference. And it's reverting back to, you know, demanding respect for ourselves in our trades. And I know that's very short-sighted, but that is within my control. I can't control the industry as a whole. I can't control creating a large-scale company to put people out of college, you know, get people out of college and pay them the salary they want to build stuff that I don't necessarily believe in, just because that's helping the industry as a whole. So while I would love to do that, I also have my own personal interests at hand, and that's, I think, you know, that's my approach to this.
Nick, thoughts?
I mean, for me, I think the biggest impact I can make is sharing our process and promoting what we believe in. And whether that is, you know, perfect quality or the craftsmanship in what we do, but also, you know, educating not only our team and the subs that we work with, and putting them in a position that they can be successful and enjoy what they do, but also on the client and explain our, you know, talk about our process and talk about why this is how we operate and why, you know, why these are the things that are important to us. Because if the client understands and we're working with them, it's very transparent. Like they're seeing what our process and the why we're, you know, behind what we're doing. I think that's the biggest thing, is just, you know, really promoting and talking about what we genuinely believe in.
Johnny, thoughts?
I mean, I agree with both these guys that it needs to be more valued in the general public, so that way people can make more money in this industry. But with that said, I think craftsmanship and quality has to come hand in hand. I think there's a lot of guys out there building crap right now and getting paid well above what they should be getting. And that's going to change when there's a correction or what have you. But I think it starts off really young. I know there's some younger kids out here, and I love that. I think getting people interested in this industry, not just the trades, but just quality. I think a lot of us' skills gap isn't so much, I mean, it's both. It's people coming up, but also the bandwidth of everyone here is taking on a lot of work. And the core group of subs you have that are trained well are now spreading out, and it's basically getting oversaturated, and the quality is going down in general. So the skilled labor could be 20-year-olds, could be 30-year-olds. Honestly, so all the old timers that are here that have the wisdom, they're also retiring, so that skill is being lost and not passed down. I think having a journey, that when I watched Tommy on This Old House, I never thought about how much money he made. I just wanted to get to that point where I could be called a master carpenter. And it might be romantic, and I think it's dead, because that was my drive every day, was to grab a new tool, to get more experience, to move my way up from laborer to carpenter, apprentice to carpenter to lead carpenter, and hopefully get to that master carpenter. I don't know if it exists anymore. That what are we following? Like a carpenter coming in, think about your question a lot. And it's like, when you get into this right now, what are you going after?
I mean, how about
what's the path?
What seems like a much straighter path or easier solution is just like getting trades involved, you know, kids involved with trades. The VOP schools, trades programs within schools, that everything was pulled. And it seems like a very easy, just put them back in the schools. But like,
Well,
I
I
have kids now who are in school, and like I see what my 5-year-old is going through in kindergarten, and like training her to be a test taker so that the school has better test scores so that they can charge more in taxes, and like this entire system. It's not just pulling the trades out because kids aren't involved. There's reasons way higher up that's happening, and like I don't know how to get that involved, get that back in the schools. I don't know how to do that.
Well, I think,
you know, and it seems like a very easy answer, but I think if we gave these young guys and girls an opportunity to get a taste of what it's like to build something or make something with their hands or get outside or create something, and while that may be romantic, nobody's getting that opportunity. So how do they know if they like it or dislike it? They're hearing the war stories, but they've never done it. Maybe they hear the war stories and they sound horrible, but they go do it for a summer and they're like, holy crap, like I love doing this, but they're never getting that opportunity.
they're not getting exposed to it. No, I think, I said this at another talk, is that, you know, we have a lot of problem solvers here. Like, we can't just sit back and go that, oh, we're screwed. There's not enough craft going on. There's not enough skilled labor. You know, I said this at another talk, was that career day isn't just for the firefighters and cops out there. You guys can clean it up, put a collared shirt on, and go see these kids at elementary schools and plant that seed. You're not going to get all 20 kids. You might get 3. That's all we need. Times 3 by the 200, 500 we have here, that's going to increase that, and they're coming into it not for the money, but they're going to feel comfortable because who they are. I mean, there's kids I talked to that then did reports on me, and it's crazy that you looked at like a hero, like how it should be. Like, they're passionate about getting back into this. When I tell kids, you can walk through walls. Like, who gets to do that? When it's open studs, like, I know, it's crazy, but it's like, that's how I think about this, and getting them involved with that, and then valuing, that's what we have to start with. I'm not saying that all the economy that are 30 and above, they're dead to us because they've already been buying houses and we can't influence them. They will. They might find it and do that built in with Nick, or that kitchen. But I think we start lower on the totem pole and expose it to these people. And if the school's not going to do it because the sports are still in it because college makes so much money on sports, they're not going to pull the athletic programs from junior highs and whatever it is. This is a harder thing to get back in, because how do you make it where more than just an individual can make money? It can be a larger scale, and your house is worth more because of the quality you put into it. It starts with all you guys going out there and hitting the ground and making it uncomfortable. This sucks. You know, standing in front of all you guys and doing it, it's not easy. So it's not going to be easy, but none of this was when you started out. So go to those schools, go to career day, ask the teacher, whether it's one classroom, not an auditorium, work your way up. That's what would make the change.
What do you, like, I know that we're short on time. When we interviewed Tom down in Florida, and his answer to this was as simple as get the kids out there and play in a sandbox with them, with like Tonka trucks. And like, there's no calculated approach to that. But what if it is as simple as that? Like, don't have your kid on an iPad, go outside, like let them play with stuff, you know? And I mean, he's been through this. He's seen ups and downs of the industry, and you know, trends come and go, and economies come and go. And what if that's part of it?
I wouldn't suggest it's not part of it, but I would also be very dubious to think that that's going to solve anything.
I mean,
I think people are making some very rational decisions, and I think that the structure is set up to put them other places.
but I mean, that is
These are millions of individuals over the course of many years making self-interested decisions that are leading them down a path that's away from this industry, and to blame sort of the decision process or the final decision, I think is sort of having blinders on. They're probably pretty good decisions that the people are making, because folks go to work to make money, to provide for their family. They understand that they've got to find some sort of personal enjoyment in that whole thing, but they also understand that they've got to make some sacrifices. And if there's an entire industry that's not providing what is sort of on the top 10 or 15 list of what people are looking for, it's a problem. Any individual company would never ignore, if they were trying to recruit employees, what the employees were asking for. They would try to find a way, but not here to hear me. We have exceeded our 45 minutes. We have got microphones that are going to be passed around so that you guys can ask questions and join the conversation. But before I do that, as promised, these poor fellows right here have to answer for other folks' sins. My job is to be a provocateur. And so I'd like to give them a round of applause. It is unfair to make them answer for all this stuff, but they get paid so well to do it.